I walk away every time my fiancé starts his annoying teeth-sucking habit. Now he says I'm hurting him, but I can't stand the noise. I, 23 female, have been living with my fiancé, 25 male, for almost 2 years, and it's been a wonderful journey for the most part. We share responsibilities, enjoy our evenings together, and generally have a solid relationship. However, like any couple, we've come across a few bumps along the way. Lately, there's been one particular issue that has been causing tension between us. About a month ago, my fiancé picked up a habit that I find difficult to tolerate. After we finish a meal, he makes this sucking noise with his teeth, almost like he's trying to clean out food particles. It's not just a one-time thing. He does it repeatedly for several minutes, and the sound is unbearable to me. The worst part is that it's not confined to just dinner or lunch. He does it after snacks, small bites, even something as simple as a piece of fruit. It's constant. I recognize that this might not seem like a big deal to some, but for me, it's incredibly triggering. Growing up, I lived with my grandparents. My grandfather had a habit of chewing with his mouth open, making all sorts of noises at the table. My grandmother, on the other hand, had a medical condition that caused her to make frequent, strained swallowing sounds. While I loved them dearly, mealtime often became an experience I dreaded. The noises were overwhelming, and I developed a heightened sensitivity to certain sounds, particularly those associated with eating. Fast forward to today, and those memories linger. I've worked hard to create a peaceful environment in my own home, but when my fiancé began making these noises, it felt like I was right back at my grandparents' table. I've tried to be understanding. I've brought it up gently multiple times, expressing how much it bothers me. He's acknowledged it each time and promised to work on it, but despite his assurances, the habit continues. I've even offered practical solutions. I suggested floss, toothpicks, portable toothbrushes, anything that could help him feel clean without resorting to the sucking noise. Unfortunately, nothing has worked. Every meal ends the same way, with that sound gnawing at my nerves. To maintain my peace of mind, I've started removing myself from the situation. After we finish eating, I get up and go to another part of the house for a few minutes. It's not an angry exit or a dramatic statement. I simply take a break, give myself some space, and return once he's done. For me, it's a reasonable solution. It's not about punishing him, it's about protecting my own well-being. However, my fiancé doesn't see it that way. Recently, we got into a heated argument about it. He accused me of overreacting and said I was making him feel self-conscious. According to him, it's not something he can easily control, and my refusal to sit with him through it made him feel rejected. I tried to explain that it wasn't about making him feel bad, but rather a matter of self-care. Still, he insisted that my actions were unfair. I understand where he's coming from to a degree. Nobody likes to feel criticized, especially over something they might not have full control over. But I also believe that I shouldn't have to subject myself to something that genuinely distresses me. In my mind, taking a 5-minute break is a fair compromise. It's not like I'm unwilling to listen or compromise further. If he could make a more conscious effort to limit the noise or try some of the alternatives I've suggested, I'd be more than willing to meet him halfway. But right now, it feels like the burden is entirely on me to endure something that makes my skin crawl, just to avoid upsetting him. It's also worth mentioning that this issue has started to bleed into other areas of our relationship. I find myself feeling tense around mealtime, anticipating the inevitable. I've even caught myself suggesting we eat in front of the TV just to have some background noise to distract from the sound. That's not the kind of atmosphere I want in my home. So, am I the antagonist here? Am I wrong for needing to step away? I love my fiancé deeply, and I want us to find a solution that works for both of us. But right now, I'm struggling to see how that's possible. I'm open to suggestions and willing to listen. Maybe there's a compromise we haven't thought of yet? Or perhaps I just need a different perspective to understand how to navigate this situation. At the end of the day, I want our home to be a place of comfort and happiness for both of us. I'm hopeful that we can work through this, but I'd be lying if I said it hasn't been tough. If anyone has insights or advice, I'm all ears. But for now, I'm left wondering if my actions really do make me the antagonist in this scenario. Story 2. I canceled the musical tickets my mom and grandma gifted me without telling them. Now mom calls me selfish, and I'm left wondering if I ruined everything. I, 24 male, recently found myself in a complicated and emotionally charged situation, and I'm struggling to determine whether I handled it correctly. The situation involves a cherished Christmas gift, my mother, 53, female, my grandmother, 84, female, and a series of tough decisions I made that have left me feeling conflicted. To give some background, for as long as I can remember, I've typically been the one to suggest my Christmas presents. I've never minded this arrangement, as it made things easier for my family, and I always ended up with something I genuinely appreciated. However, this past Christmas, something was different. My mother and grandmother gave me something special without any input from me, tickets to a musical that I've been wanting to see for over 7 years. It had recently begun touring in my country, and the tickets were for a performance at the beginning of March. When I first opened the envelope containing the tickets, I was overwhelmed with joy. I've always loved musical theater, and seeing this particular show had been a dream of mine. The fact that my mother and grandmother had remembered and made it happen meant the world to me. It wasn't just a present, it was a gesture of love and understanding. However, in the weeks following Christmas, everything changed. My grandmother's health took a sharp decline. She underwent a major surgery, and complications arose, resulting in her being placed in palliative and aged care. My mother and I were actually overseas when it happened, and we had to rush back home, doing everything we could to be there for her. The days that followed were emotionally draining. Seeing my grandmother in her current state, knowing how much she was suffering, was heartbreaking. My mother, too, was completely overwhelmed. She tried her best to be strong, but it was clear that the emotional toll was weighing on her heavily. As we navigated this difficult time, the upcoming musical tickets loomed in the back of my mind. I began to worry that the timing simply wasn't right. Each day brought new anxieties, particularly as my grandmother's condition fluctuated. There were days she seemed stable, and then, without warning, she'd experience a sudden downturn. These incidents occurred at least twice a week, each time leaving us fearful that we might lose her. In addition to the stress of my grandmother's situation, I've been dealing with my own medical issues. The toll of the sudden travel, the sleepless nights, and the emotional exhaustion had worsened my condition. My body felt weak, and my mental health was suffering. The thought of attending a crowded theater in this state felt impossible. After a lot of thinking, I made the difficult decision to cancel the tickets. I truly believed it was the best choice at the time. I felt that my mother could use the opportunity to take some time for herself rather than feeling obligated to attend the show. With so much on her plate, I thought the experience might only add to her stress. And if anything happened to my grandmother while we were at the theater, the guilt would be unbearable. I hoped that, amidst everything going on, both my mother and grandmother would forget about the tickets. I thought that by canceling quietly, I could prevent any further stress. However, my decision backfired completely. When my mother found out that I had canceled the tickets without telling her, she was furious. The argument that followed was intense. She accused me of being selfish and inconsiderate. She said I had no right to make the decision on my own, and that I had forced my will upon others. Her words cut deep. I hadn't meant to hurt anyone. I was genuinely trying to do what I thought was best for everyone. But clearly, I had misjudged the situation. The guilt I've been carrying has been overwhelming. I've barely slept in the past week, replaying the argument over and over in my mind. I'm deeply ashamed for not discussing it with her before making the decision. I've since told her that I'm willing to pay double the cost of the tickets, which was around $1,000 USD, as both a gesture of remorse and an attempt to make things right. But even that doesn't feel like enough. I understand now that I should have communicated better. Perhaps my mother would have preferred to attend the show as a way to distract herself, or maybe she would have chosen to reschedule instead of canceling outright. By making the choice alone, I denied her that agency, and for that, I feel terrible. At the same time, I'm struggling with the question of whether my actions were entirely unjustified. The fear of something happening to my grandmother while we were at the theater was very real. I've heard stories of people receiving devastating news in the middle of events like these, and the thought of that happening to us was unbearable. I also wanted my mother to have the chance to decompress without the added pressure of attending a large public event. I've been trying to find a way to mend things with my mother. I've apologized profusely and expressed my regret. I've also made it clear that I'm committed to doing whatever I can to make it up to her, but I'm still plagued by doubt. Was I truly in the wrong? Was it unreasonable of me to cancel the tickets given the circumstances? Or was I simply trying to protect my family in the only way I knew how? This situation has left me feeling lost. I've always valued honesty and open communication, but I failed in this instance. I know I can't undo what's been done, but I want to learn from this experience. Ultimately, I hope to rebuild the trust and understanding between my mother and me. So, I ask, am I the a-hole? Or was I just someone trying to navigate an impossible situation the best I could? I'm open to any advice or perspectives, as I genuinely want to grow from this and make amends with my family. Story 3. My pregnant self said no to my mom's sick cat. Now she says I'm selfish for not cat-sitting every night, even after she ignored vet advice. I, 26 female, am in a bit of a difficult situation with my mom, 58 female, and I'm struggling with whether I handled it the right way. For context, my mom has always been an avid cat lover, and her pets are like family to her. Her current cat, Jake, 15, male, has been with her for many years and has recently fallen very ill. He's been experiencing seizures, and despite multiple vet visits and extensive testing, the exact cause remains unknown. My mom has invested a significant amount of money and time trying to help Jake, and her emotional attachment to him has made the entire experience even harder. Since Jake's seizures started, my mom has been unwilling to leave him alone for any length of time. She's called out of work on numerous occasions to stay with him, fearing he might have a seizure while she's gone. Her boss has since warned her about falling behind and has required her to come in after hours to catch up. That's where I come in. My mom asked if I could watch Jake in the evenings so she could go to the office. The first time she asked, I agreed. I work a full-time job and typically finish my day around 4 p.m. That day, I drove to her house, arriving around 5 p.m. I ended up staying until 9 p.m., which, for me, essentially felt like the whole night. I usually wind down early and am often asleep by that time. The situation has become more complicated because I'm currently 17 weeks pregnant. This pregnancy has been exhausting for me, and after a long workday, I really need time to relax, cook a proper dinner, and take care of myself. Additionally, my mom's home is not the cleanest. She has struggled with clutter and hoarding tendencies for as long as I can remember. Being in that environment for hours is not only unpleasant, but it also exacerbates my allergies and asthma, which I've had for years. The air is often dusty, and the general lack of cleanliness makes it a challenge for me to breathe comfortably. Another complicating factor is the management of Jake's medication. The vet prescribed him anti-seizure medication to be given daily. However, my mom mistakenly believed it was only temporary and stopped administering it once she thought he had stabilized. On top of that, she disliked how Jake's behavior changed while he was on the medication, claiming it made him lethargic and unlike his usual self. Unfortunately, stopping the medication led to a relapse, and the seizures returned. Now that Jake's seizures have started again, my mom is asking me to come over every night this week to cat sit. When she first made the request, I hesitated. While I completely understand her desire to ensure Jake isn't alone, I'm not convinced that my presence makes a meaningful difference. Jake is an older cat who mostly rests on his bed. He doesn't seek my company or require constant attention. If a seizure were to occur, I would not be responsible for administering any medication or taking him to the vet, as those tasks would still fall to my mom. My mom's primary concern seems to be the emotional comfort of knowing someone is with Jake. While I empathize with her anxiety, I also have to consider my own well-being. Pregnancy has made it even clearer to me that I need to establish boundaries, something I've struggled with in the past. I'm an only child, and my mom has always leaned heavily on me for both emotional and financial support. I've done my best to be there for her, often putting my own needs on the back burner. But as I prepare to become a parent myself, I'm realizing how important it is to protect my health and maintain a sense of balance. I explained to my mom why I didn't think it was necessary for me to come over every night. I highlighted that Jake didn't actively need my care and that I wouldn't be taking on any medical responsibilities. I also mentioned how difficult it is for me to be in her home, given my allergies and the environment. Additionally, the lack of time to prepare a healthy dinner or unwind properly after work was beginning to take a toll on me. Unfortunately, my mom didn't respond well to this. She accused me of being selfish and unsupportive, stating that she couldn't believe I wouldn't be there for her and Jake during such a stressful time. She emphasized how alone she feels and insisted that Jake's health is a matter of life and death. While I do understand her fear, I also feel that she isn't recognizing the impact this has on me, both physically and emotionally. I've tried to offer alternatives. I suggested she look into hiring a pet sitter, contacting a friend, or even exploring options for short-term and home care through her vet. I also offered to check in by phone frequently while she was at work so she could feel reassured. However, she dismissed these suggestions, insisting that it had to be me. This entire situation has left me racked with guilt. I've always done my best to be there for my mom, but I can't shake the feeling that I'm letting her down. At the same time, I know I'm not wrong for wanting to prioritize my own health and well-being, especially while carrying my baby. Boundaries are difficult, particularly when a loved one is struggling, but I'm trying to remind myself that caring for myself doesn't mean I don't care about my mom or Jake. Am I the a-hole? Should I have set my discomfort aside and agreed to babysit Jake, knowing how much it meant to my mom? Or was it reasonable for me to say no and suggest other options? I'd appreciate any insight on whether I handled this situation fairly or if there's a better approach I could have taken.